everybody. It's kind of funny, the countdown at the top there was going, I'm going, geez. I mean, if anybody's read anything that I've done recently, there's another countdown that's going on in my life, and I'll tell you about that a little bit later. But that one I'm still counting down to, and I'm really looking forward to in the last few seconds we're going. I'll be honest, I do speak a bit. I speak at work on those subjects, things of gender identity, inclusivity, diversity. Every once in a while I do, for things like positive space, I do give testimonials and whatnot. But something like this, we've been doing this, a lot of people have been doing this today. This is something that is outside of my comfort zone. I am pushing myself. So, thanks. So even though we got screens around here, I am going to be looking at my notes here, because eventually, if I don't follow that, I'll end up getting emotional, and that's probably not good for any of us right now. So, yeah, so far, all through today, we've listened to a lot of fearless women. I mean, there's fearless women in the audience here. There's fearless women outside of the Carleton University, everywhere in the world. Today, we've heard successes. We've heard tips to succeed. We've heard struggles. We've heard burdens. I struggled, and you heard in my intro, I've struggled in life, and it's kind of funny, even for this event, I struggled a bit to figure out what kind of a message, what could I contribute to such an honored group. And I say that considering that, the life experience I've had, I guess you say as a fearless woman, has actually only been just the last couple of years. But the thing is contributions can come in many ways. I realized that the life that I have lived is replete. It's filled with experiences and examples that they may not actually have been experienced by other women in the room. So I came up in the end with something worth sharing, something to share with such a special audience. So what I have today is I find it is actually truly a privilege to be here. And yes, I snuck that in. This is about privilege. To be able to speak to you about who I am. And who I am in a way to provide a catalyst to understand the ways in which privilege, and that word comes up over and over again in this talk, influences how we go about living our lives. So hopefully I'm going the right way on this thing. So I guess we'll start out by just basic definitions. Privilege, what is it? Most of us don't go around our daily lives having like a dictionary in our back pocket. We don't go around going, well, what word should I be using right now? The thing is most of us use the words that we have based off of the experiences that we've had, the way they've been used by the people before us. Those things can change our perceptions. Even the intent of those words that they have been used, that we have the people that have used them before us. And the thing is we end up seeing a lot of times privilege used to describe things like what you see up here, in a way of misogyny, male privilege, oppression, as in controlled by privileged people, power and authority, like people in positions of privilege. Like I said at the beginning here, I feel it privileged to be in front of you here. In that way, it's an honor if you are privileged. In some sense, gratitude. I am so privileged to know you. Now we got the education out of the way. I'm going to talk, very short education. I'm going to talk a bit about myself, and this goes right back to the beginning. I was born in late 1969. I had very loving parents, very hardworking. I won't speak for everybody here, but I think most people probably remember that in the 1980s there was a recession that hit the world, and it lasted for almost a decade. And it meant that a lot of people, including my parents, they had to work extra hard. My dad spent time away. He worked 3 jobs. He tried starting different businesses. A lot of them failed. It just meant that we as a family were not as cohesive as we wanted. They worked as hard as they could to keep a roof over our head, food on the table. Thing is what we actually had to focus on was actually surviving, the basics. I realized later in life that at that point in time I was actually seeing something that it took me a while to understand. The fact, houses and families, my friends around me, some of them had a happier lives. You know, some of them were leading more fulfilled lives. Why? You know, some of it was because they had their house paid off before the recession started. Maybe their parents, both of them were working. Maybe they had money in the family already. But the thing is what I realized is that there's so many people out there whose lives were already improved just because of the situation that they were in. And I have to say, it wasn't literally until I actually got to the point in my life I actually had to start considering my feelings. I needed to start talking about them, that I realized that the family that I had, our growing up, I realized that feelings itself was a privilege. Like for us, it was a luxury. We didn't have the time for it. It wasn't until, as I said, I came out and actually started dealing with my family that I actually got to start feeling and communicating. In my teenage years, I had a lot of responsibility. But the same is, you know, with my parents being gone all the time, working as hard as they were, I actually had a lot of autonomy. I wanted to learn. I wanted to experience the world and where I fit in it. With all of the struggles that we had, travel was actually out of the question. You know, some of the steps that I took on my life journey were actually in roles that I was not comfortable in. My grandfather at one point recommended I join Army cadets, and you know, typical, that's what young men do. The thing is I don't regret any of those steps. I'm actually grateful to have had the freedom to explore and experience some of those things that made me a person, the person on the inside, and be given the opportunities that were in front of me. So I also embarked on a journey to discover myself by challenging myself and being challenged. I joined the military. That in itself makes me rather fortunate in the fact that I actually received a very good, top-notch education at the same time as learning discipline and leadership. I also learned about social interactions, biases, diversity, both in good and bad ways. Because you see, in the military, it's just a cross-section of society. We pull from the same people that make up the country. But the thing is this is also an institution where privilege has been established for centuries as a way to control subordinates. In the military, the military authority is actually granted through to certain individuals by the Queen through commissions. The thing is, with this authority also comes responsibility, and as you can probably understand, with greater responsibility comes greater authority. But the thing is this authority is privilege in its truest sense, because it actually gives power to certain individuals, control over others. But as you can probably understand, this power isn't always used. This authority, this privilege isn't always used properly. Sadly, it's been misused, both in this country and around the world. I said in the military, though, this privilege is actually amplified because of the hierarchical structure that we have. Also, the fact that we actually wear we have visible, signs of that authority, that privilege on our shoulders, on our uniforms. I said there have been those with authority have used power to their own benefit. This is to protect their interests, or force others to comply when influence is not enough. I said one of the issues that society has faced is that for much of her history, written history, men were the warriors. Men were the leaders. Various cultures have taught that men were superior to women in terms of leadership, abilities to work, to learn, even in decision-making, voting. Personally, I had thought that we had actually advanced past those stereotypes, but it wasn't that long ago, even in the military, that women still actually, in addition to proving their capabilities, they actually had to prove themselves. Now, my life journey actually set me on a path where I benefited from male privilege. I was accepted as an equal solely because of my biological sex. As a man, I wasn't questioned. Now, it wasn't until I actually started living my true life that I met another fearless woman. Some of you may have heard of her, Sandra Perron, the very first female infantry officer in Canada. And it's actually when I met her that I actually truly understand that we both had to prove that we were equals. Although I was fighting my own internal struggle, in some way I had a simpler existence just because of my biology. Now, I want to say at this moment that I actually honor all the struggles and burdens and hurdles that all the women before me have had to go through on the way to equality, on the way to acceptance. But I would also ask at this time that women like myself, that our journey to womanhood be respected just the same. It may not have been the same path, the same burdens and struggles, but it is a path just the same. Now, some of these struggles don't always appear as simple as, or as obvious as like women's suffrage. Sometimes it actually takes a change in perspective. And if you can understand, I had a big change in perspective to realize that one is actually climbing a hill instead of walking in a flat field. I used an example. One day, my own therapist was asking me how my wife was dealing with my transition. And I told her, well, she's having a hard time. You know, it's taken a lot for her because she's grieving the loss of her husband. She's asking, like, why is that? And I says, well, because there's things about her husband that she misses. Then she asked me, well, is there anything you miss about Kevin? That actually took me a little bit by surprise. Took me a few seconds, but I actually realized, I said, yeah, actually there is something that I actually miss. I said, I miss the ease at which the world let him go through. So it was actually that moment that I understood that Kevin, that he lived in a world of male privilege. And maybe this is the first time you've heard this phrase, but he also lived in a world of cisgender privilege. Cisgender being, in line with your biological sex. He simply had to walk through life being afforded an unseen benefit of not being questioned or challenged, just because he appeared on the outside to be a cisgender, heterosexual, married man. Now, so many times in the last couple of years, I've missed this privilege, this simplicity of existence, to not have to justify your gender, explain your differences, of not being told that, like, I'm not a real woman. I've actually been told that, because I haven't had the same struggles and challenges, that my chromosomes are not the same as everybody else's. Or even being told that I'm a monster or a pervert because this is some kind of sexual fetish. I've even had my name challenged over the phone, more than likely just because of my voice. But my name, that's my identity. It's difficult when your existence is tested, it's pushed. I mean, it's been a lifelong battle to assert the true identity, the person I am on the inside. So when another person doesn't accept it, it actually like gnaws at the core of my being. But I also understand that this journey has caused struggles for those outside of my life. And I'm not just talking about my family and my friends, but some of them have a difficulty accepting my true existence. They struggle with the perception that in becoming a woman, I've somehow given up power, strength, and position that I had as a man, a father, a husband. I mean, these sort of comments actually reinforce that there continues to be an environment of misogyny in this world. But rather, I'm not giving up anything. I'm actually gaining so much being the woman on the outside that I've always been on the inside. I actually feel privileged. Here we go. I actually feel privileged when I live my life as a woman, that when I identify on the outside verbally, I am a woman. Thank you. I also feel very privileged that I have actually found myself. I mean, we've heard other speakers talk about them finding themselves, but I actually, found myself. But I'm also privileged that I'm actually able to live my authentic life. Not everybody is. No, we're getting to the end here, but as I walked my path to who I am, I've better been able to comprehend where I am in my life. Actually, I just found out not that long ago that in a couple of weeks I'm actually going to be having my gender confirmation surgery. And now coming to grips with this opportunity that's in front of me, and preparing for that day, once again, I've come to the realization, the understanding of the true privilege that I have. I have so many advantages. You can see them up there as it says, I have secure employment. I have health care. In the military, I have experience, I have education, I have a position, I have certain authorities. We could even say that I actually have a position of privilege because I'm able to take advantage of those benefits that I have. But I also have the ability to spread the benefits and wealth. Now, at this point, this is where the whole point of my presentation is not really to tell my story, but I told this. The true point of my talk, I just don't want to blurt. I didn't want to blurt it out at the beginning. It took me 48 years to figure it out, but we all actually have an opportunity. We can all contribute to positive change, and as I said, not take 48 years to do it. But what I would like to do is ask everybody to work with me for a couple of minutes because we actually have 4 minutes left. And I said I'd actually like you to all close your eyes for a short time and look inside yourself. Consider your life. Not each and every day that you've had for whatever the number of years you've been alive, but the general feel you have about your life. Do you feel happy? Do you feel sad? Are there things in your life that bring a smile to your face? Those things that actually give you a feeling of success, a feeling of fulfillment or contentment. Perhaps it's your health. Perhaps it's your family, your education, your job. Maybe you're well off. Maybe you're debt-free. Think about it for a few seconds. Evaluate, what it is about your life that makes you happy, gives you that feeling of success. Now you can open your eyes now. I don't want you falling asleep on me. Now I want you to actually look around the room. Look at the people beside you. Look at the people over in the corners at the top. Look at the people up on, there's no stage here, but up on the stage. Now, think about it and ask yourself if you think that everyone else that you see has the ability to have the same feelings of success, the same feelings of fulfillment and contentment. Now, consider for a moment for those that may not be able to, that you actually have an advantage in those areas where you feel fulfillment and success. You're privileged. Now, as you go about the rest of your day, take time to actually acknowledge the privilege that you have in your own life. And the thing is, I truly believe that everyone should regularly access, this privilege, your advantages. But more than just, acknowledging the existence of those advantages and privileges, that everyone should evaluate how they can turn that into an opportunity. Use it to bring a benefit to those who don't have that same privilege. Perhaps it's through education or advocacy. Perhaps it's through volunteering or mentoring. Sorry, there I am giggling. You told me not to. Perhaps it's as simple as a donation to charity. We're doing that here. Consider this, much like the authority granted to the Queen with her commissions, the advantages which come with privilege also come with a responsibility, a social responsibility, to use the privilege like a superpower for the good of all humanity. So, like it says up here, it's time to take action. Don't delay. Be the best that you can be and find a way to help others be the best that they can be. So I'm going to finish with just a couple of words that a friend of mine recently just said to me, and it's so simple, just get her done. Okay? Thanks.